And welcome to yet another EVE tutorial. This time I will be covering gunnery skills, turret damage, missiles and missile skills. Firstly, I think I will cover missiles. Now, the equation for damage in missiles is a little bit complicated. In fact, that's what it is. So, rather than break it all down, because frankly I don't want to go cross-eyed nor do you, I'm just going to explain a few of the principles involved in this equation itself. Before I do, however, the two skills for missile range would be missile bombardment and missile projection. Can't remember how they, which order they come in, but one of them increases the speed of your missiles. This has no application whatsoever in the damage of your missile. It only decreases the time it takes to reach the target, or of course combined with the other skill which increases the flight time of a missile. Combined can increase the range significantly, because of course if a missile is flying faster and longer, then it will reach out further. Anyways, aside from those two, the basic foundation of missile damage is what is called your signature radius. I believe we discussed this in the tanking tutorial, how we had the shield extenders increase your signature radius. So let's just pretend we have one. Let's make it nice and pretty. Yeah. So let's pretend that's the signature radius of our ship. Now, a missile has its own explosion radius. So if a missile were to fly in to your ship, make that black, and then explode, if the explosion were to be bigger than your ship, if the explosion was bigger than your ship, so say you had an explosion radius of 500 meters cubed and the signature radius was only 300, then you would do less damage. It's sort of, the principle behind it is a little bit weird, but basically all you need to know is if the explosion radius is bigger, you will lose damage. However, if it's a smaller missile and it happens to be smaller than the signature radius of the ship, then this will apply no penalty. Bear in mind that every single stat I bring up will either incur a penalty or not. You will not have any bonuses to damage in missiles. The raw value you see when you've fitted the missile and it says your DPS and the damage per volley, that's the highest potential damage you can obtain with a missile volley. So everything else is just reducing that amount. So another factor to consider would be your the speed of the ship relative to the speed of the explosion. There is an explosion velocity attribute in missiles as well. This one's a lot more simple to understand. Basically, if this guy's whooshing along super quick and a missile were to hit behind him, if this guy is moving faster than the actual explosion, then of course he can, Die Hard style, or Star Wars or whatever movie you'd like, actually float just on the edge of the explosion and get away. This will cause less damage, obviously. So, signature radius versus explosion radius, and ship velocity as opposed to explosion velocity. If you want to reduce these factors, there is a skill called Target Navigation Prediction, which will negate some of the factor of the ship's velocity. So it will basically give you more leeway and more damage as opposed to the raw factor of how fast the ship and the missile explode at. Conversely, the Guided Missile Precision skill will reduce the ship's effective the missile's effective explosion radius, so you do not need as big a ship radius or signature radius to actually incur maximum damage. You can also fit a target painter, which blossoms up the ship's signature radius as well. What else is there for missiles? I think that's about it. Missiles are actually quite simple in their damage application. So you have bombardment and projection for range, you have guided missile precision for explosion radius, and you have target navigation prediction for explosion velocity. So let's move on to gunnery. Gunnery is a much more complicated weapon system to actually understand the damage application of. The first one we will cover will be your range and your fall off. I'm sure a lot of you have fitted a laser or something and gone, well, you know, what exactly does my fall off do? The exact equation is here. So if you are at 0% of your tracking or fall off, so, you know, you are within your optimal range, your hit chance is 100% and your DPS reduction is 0. Bear in mind, this is not exactly 100% because tracking comes into the situation, which I'll explain later on. But for purposes of optimal range and fall off, this is the chart you want to be looking at. I will put up a link to this in the description. I will also put up. I'll also put up a link to the page where I got this formula from, and it will explain it. But I mean, you know, if you sit down and actually work it out for each of your missiles, then you're a better man than I am. Either way, optimal range is covered. Let's talk about tracking. So, if I have a turret, let's say the turret has an arc of fire of this much, right? So a ship, to shoot a ship, it has to be within this arc. And of course, if a ship is orbiting around you, then it will pass through your arc and then leave it. It could be on the other side. Which means your turret needs to be able to follow the ship, track it to apply its damage. This is a value, I think it's measured in radius. What you need to worry about, basically, is how fast the ship is moving laterally in relative to your ship. So if it's moving directly away from you, so if it's just moving like that, in a straight line away from you, it has no angular velocity. Because even it might be moving, you know, 10 kilometers a second away, however, it's not moving any sort of rotational direction away from you. So essentially your tracking is 0. You can hit this target with your 100%, assuming it's in optimal range, of course. Things get a little bit tricky when it's moving around like this, because then these turrets need to chase your ship. The most important thing to consider would be the range of your turret to the ship. For instance, let's consider it's taking this path at this distance away. This is how far the turret has to fire upon the ship. It's a much larger distance than this distance, which is a lot smaller and a lot closer. Therefore, if this ship was moving at the same speed, closer in, the turrets would have to move a lot faster to keep up. Therefore, there is a higher chance of you missing the ship with tracking. This is the main principle involved in speed tanking. If you can orbit a ship so quickly that its guns cannot get a bead on you, then you don't need to worry about any particular tank itself, which is good because speed tanks generally don't have any real tank. You can avoid the damage. This is especially tried and true for interceptor class ships, which are Tech 2 frigates designed to catch larger ships, lock down their warp drives, evade fire until a fleet arrives to support them. Also, I forgot to cover it, but in the missiles, if you want to speed tank a missile, you want to combine speed with a smaller signature radius, of course, because those are the two major factors which modify the damage of a missile. Again, interceptors shine at this because they are small, they have modified signature radiuses, they actually have a modifier which reduces the signature bloom from a micro warp drive, and they go bloody fast. So to counteract this, you will probably want to get motion prediction. That is the major skill for your turret rotation. Also bear in mind that turrets are designed for specific roles. So if you have a light turret, it is designed to be able to hit frigates and destroyers. If you have a medium turret, it is designed to be able to hit cruisers and battle cruisers. And if you have a large turret, it is designed to hit a battleship. So a large turret is going to struggle to be able to hit a cruiser, considering the size of the cruiser and the speed at which it travels. Of course, with better skills, implants, all that sort of stuff, tracking computers you can fit in your mid slots. You can blur the line between what you can hit and what you can't, but as a generalized rule, light for frigates and destroyers and so on. There are also generally speaking, close range and long range variants of every weapon type. For instance, lasers have pulse lasers or beam lasers. Pulse lasers have a shorter range, but across the board they have a much faster tracking speed as opposed to beam lasers, which have a longer range and a much lower tracking speed. This is a common theme throughout every weapon system for the gunnery. So blasters and railguns are the same, short range, long range. Lasers also have the added benefit of having crystals which dictate their range. Again, the shorter range of crystals are going to have inherently better tracking than the longer range of crystals. It's always something you want to be considering. If you're a sniping ship, you do not want anybody near you. And of course, if you're a close range ship, if someone's far away, you can't hit them. You need to work out just what you want to be doing there. I think that... What else am I missing for turrets? I think that's about it. So, yeah, basically, if you want a speed tank, go fast, keep as tight in orbit as you can, and have your signature radius as low as possible. Also bear in mind, this is where the finesse comes in, especially for turrets, because as I mentioned, let's just clean this up. If a ship is moving directly away from yours, there is no angular velocity. Make this a bit bigger. So that, no angular velocity. He needs to be doing that. So what you need to do is you need to find a way to stop this happening. You need to either intercept him, or get up close and use a web or a disruptor. Basically, it's going to be a fight between you to keep this up, and for him to keep this up, and get your tracking on. This is especially useful against NPCs, because NPCs are idiots. So if you do have a frigate orbiting you around like that, simply burn away from him. And what he's going to do is he's going to go, oh, well, I'm out of range, so he's going to chase you. And all of a sudden, your angular velocity is 0 again. That's a great little trick to catch NPCs. Of course, this is only going to work against idiots in PvP, but yeah, that's where the finesse comes. Anyways, I've rambled on enough. Any questions, leave it in the comments, and fly safe.